It's the Cut to the Chase Sports Podcast. We are talking running backs, offensive line, and defensive tackles. And Matt's hosting the show today. Oh my God, let's go.
ATL Jacob.
Everybody to Cut to the Chase Sports Podcast, where we bring unique insight and analysis to your favorite collegiate and professional sports. I am your host today, Matt Ricketts. Okay, nice to see everybody. Chase, how are you going? How's it going, man?
Man, I'm doing good. This is a really interesting side of it to be on, but here we are. I'm glad to be here.
Brady, my main man, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing good, and I'm glad to have you instructing the whole episode. It's definitely gonna be nice, and glad to be on. That's all I gotta say. Glad to be on.
Absolutely, Brady. Go ahead and tell them about the YouTube content and liking and subscribing and everything like that. Rock and roll with that.
Yeah. So we're gonna be having some good stuff lately. So what you're gonna have to do, what I want you to do, is go ahead and watch this stuff, like, subscribe to our page, check out our shorts. We've been blowing up some shorts recently from our takes from our episodes, and check out our past videos as well. If you haven't been watching the channel, definitely go ahead and check some of those videos, see if you like it, and then hopefully you would keep hitting that subscribe. Hopefully you will keep hitting that like button, and you will subscribe, and you'll have some good content heading your way.
Good job.
Back to you, Matt.
Absolutely. All right, boys. So today, we're going to talk about running backs, offensive line, and interior defensive line today on today's show. Going into the NFL big board, the NFL draft season obviously is among us. It's an exciting time of year. So let's go ahead and get started with the running backs. For most draft boards so far this year, your top three guys are Bijan Robinson from Texas, Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama, and then Zach Charbonnet from UCLA. So Chase, I'm going to start with you here. Who do you think is a guy that, not named Bijan Robinson or one of these other guys just flying under the radar that you think might move up into the draft this year or, will end up being hidden gem maybe later in the draft?
Well, I was watching a Cincinnati versus Tulane game this past season, and the name Tyjae Spears came to mind from Tulane. I mean, he was a fantastic player this year, ran the ball over 251 times, scored 24 touchdowns, led Tulane to a fantastic season, which ended up, winning the Cotton Bowl over USC. He's got great agility, nice power, and excellent receiving skills out of the backfield. If he's probably going to fall into a mid-round pick, but I think any team that gets their hands on him, I think a playoff team already, if they get their hands on him, I mean, he's going to be the ultimate piece for their success going into the future. So I really like Tyjae Spears out of Tulane.
Where do you see him falling? Draft round wise, I guess you could say maybe fourth, fifth. Where do you see him?
I could see him start at day 3, maybe the end of day 2, but that's going to be, there's a lot of great running backs in this thing. I mean, Brady's going to give us top 5 here in a little bit, but I could see him go to about, round 4, I'd say. I think, running backs right now, I mean, they are such a universal position. Like it comes to the fact, like, running backs lifespans are like at their top, like 6 years or something like that, 6-7 years are what the best running backs are really staying afloat at. And, if you're able to get some guys in the 4th and 5th round and they're able to plug and play into a good system, it's going to keep them fresh. It's going to keep, other guys in there, like a running back by committee system, really well. And I think Tyjae Spears really fits the mold into doing that. And he could take over in someone's backfield. So I see about the 4th round. And I think that's going to be a very, very good value pick for whatever team he goes to.
Yeah. Brady, over to you. Go ahead and give us your top 5 running backs coming into the draft this year. And then afterwards, give me a guy that people need to hear his name. Maybe he's under the radar, a guy that could move up in the draft boards this year.
Gotcha. So going to the top 5 list, we go ahead and start with number 1, which is Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. Most people would have Jahmyr at 2. Most people would have Jahmyr at 2, I would say, but I would.
You all right? What's going on with you?
What's going on?
Jameer.
Is he crying? No, I'm just kidding.
What is happening?
Anyways, Jameer's one. I just think he's the most dynamic back in the class. Best acceleration. Very fast. Runs a 4.3 in the 40. Great receiving threat. Transfer to Bama. Has experience against some good defenses. A great player. 2, Bijan Robinson. While I do think he's overrated, not a general running back prospect, obviously still a very good player. Would have loved if he would have stayed committed to Ohio State back in 2020. But we got some great guys to replace him, so it's all right. 3, Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA, the transfer from Michigan. Definitely not the fastest running back, but very powerful nonetheless. I love the way he plays. He can get those short yardage situations almost every time, and he's a workhorse, so you can give him the ball a lot. 4, I have Kendre Miller out of TCU. Really enjoyed watching him this year. Great balance. He has a mix of speed and power, and just overall one of my favorite running backs. And then number 5 is maybe the most powerful back tank in the draft, Tank Bigsby. And this guy just runs people over. He's a straight up, downhill runner, and I really love watching him as well throughout these past 3 years. And then a guy that I would say you need to watch out for is Chase Brown out of Illinois, due to the sole fact that last year, we forget, he was first team All Big Ten. I believe he was a Doak Walker finalist. Definitely a workhorse back. You can give him the ball 30-plus times a game, so he could definitely turn into something big.
I like that. That's a great pick there. It was a guy that, honestly, during the season, I thought might end up being a top 5 back coming in to the draft just because he was literally the workhorse for that Illinois team. Mm-hmm. It was a great running back this year. Chase, let's go ahead and segue to Chase. Pick a couple guys, I guess, maybe, and compare them to who you see them as in the NFL, some characteristics, attributes, things like that.
Well, okay, I'll start with this. I think the UCLA back, Zach Charbonnet, that's a guy that, I'm potentially looking at as a Bengals fan and, in the second or third round, trying to get, maybe not third round, but probably second round. How I would compare Zach Charbonnet, 6 foot, 214 pounds, hard downhill runner, bruising back. I see, a combination of 2 Georgia running backs in Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. I think he does a really good job of absorbing contact. He's a very good pass catcher, underrated pass catcher, I'd say. And, I think he's a back that gets better as the game goes on. And that's a huge thing in the National Football League when it comes to a pass first schemes. And he's able to come in there and kind of close games out. So I would say the comparison of the, mixture of Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe it's because, he's got the dreads like Alvin Kamara is why I'm comparing him to him. That's not it. But he's the pass catching ability. That's what it is. Pass catching ability, open field speed, breakaway speed, whatever you want to call it. He's a fantastic receiver out of the backfield. He'll be a quarterback's best friend when it comes to checkdowns and everything else. So I would compare Jahmyr Gibbs to Alvin Kamara. Bijan Robinson's a tough one. I don't know. He's a great running back, average 4 yards a carry and 4 yards after attempt. Fantastic back. A lot of people see Travis Etienne, even Bryce Love. It's a very interesting comparison. I don't know, but I think I kind of got to see more from Bijan Robinson to see who I compare him to. But the 2 below, it was kind of an easier one to really come with, but Bijan Robinson, my pick is I don't know who the fuck I'd compare him to, is all I got to say.
All right. Yeah, I would agree mostly. I think that Jahmyr Gibbs is with Alvin Kamara, it's a really good comparison. I think you hear that from a lot of the guys that are talking, a lot of the draft experts and everything. Let's go ahead and move forward here to offensive line. Obviously, you got the Big Ten full of great offensive linemen coming into the draft this year. Obviously, Paris Johnson, who some people think is the best prospect in the draft, which is crazy. But it's crazy to say because I didn't see it coming in. We knew he was a great player just from being at Ohio State and everything. But seeing him up there, you got Paris Johnson, Peter Skoronski from Northwestern, guys like that. And then also even DeJuan Jones, the Georgia tackle, Broderick Jones is his name as well. So, Chase, who is prime to make a huge impact out of this group? Who do you think, comes in, high draft pick, day one, starting for this team, making a big impact?
Well, I think Paris Johnson will, but that's obviously an easy answer. I think Peter Skoronski is going to also fall to a playoff team. I think he's going to be inserted into a lineup like maybe the Chargers and do a really good job there. So I think he's going to be in probably a better situation when it comes to having guys around him and guys he can learn from. So I would say Peter Skoronski's an easier plug and play guy when it comes to being in, a system where it's, they're already successful and all that. Paris Johnson's going to go early. Okay. And, he's going to be probably with the Bears, I would say. And I'm not saying that, I'm saying, the Bears are not that good of a football team right now. Obviously they could, end up making some big strides this coming season, but I think Peter Skoronski, wherever he goes, which I think will be, mid first round, later on in the first round, I think he'll be around some veterans that'll help him out. I think he'll be able to absorb easier into a lineup. So I'll say Peter Skoronski.
Brady, let's go ahead and get your patented top 5 list here of offensive linemen, and then give us another guy that you think, isn't necessarily on there that you think is going to have a huge impact in the next level. Give me another under the radar guy.
Gotcha. So, I'll start at number 1. First off, number 1, I have Paris Johnson Jr. Definitely the easy pick at 1. Obviously, he earned that this year. 6'7", 315 maybe. I'm not positive on that number weight-wise, but just a massive human. Great pass blocker and run blocker. He can do it all. Great dude. Everyone knows his off-the-field antics are amazing. And just an overall quick feet, everything. He's the number 1 tackle prospect for sure. 2 is Peter Skoronski, as Chase mentioned. Has short arms, but was very efficient at Northwestern. He was good in almost every game he played in. He didn't allow many sacks whatsoever. He did get destroyed once by Lucas Van Ness against Iowa, but, every offensive lineman is going to mess up every once in a while. Just an overall very solid player. Moving on to number 3, I have John Michael Schmitz, who was the best center in college football. I know that Oluwaseun Oluwatimi out of Michigan won that award, which I'm not even going to take anything away. Very good player, but I don't think anybody is arguing that John Michael Schmitz is the best center in this draft. So definitely he's getting that 3rd spot and being the only interior offensive lineman on this list. Coming in at number 4 is actually Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. Had a great season. He absolutely did a great job on Will Anderson this year. And he nobody really knew this guy before the season, but he was the backbone of their O-line and was protecting Hendon Hooker very well on Tennessee's path to success this season, except for against South Carolina. Not that he didn't play, but they did get whooped against South Carolina. But number 5, I have DeJuan Jones. Speaking of massive humans, nobody in this class is really close to the sheer mass of DeJuan Jones. He is 6'8.5", 360, just massive. Athletic for his size too. Like he, good dunker in basketball. Great basketball player. So he has an athletic background, can move. Pass blocking is pretty nuts. I don't think I've really ever seen him get beat. And then he's also a really good run blocker. When he gets a hold of somebody, they're probably falling to the ground. He even put Jalen Carter on the ground once or twice against Georgia. So definitely a good player there as well. And then moving on to my, player not on this list that I think could make a big impact is actually Broderick Jones, because I just wanted to mention him because I didn't put him on this list. He would have been number 6, the Georgia tackle. Definitely a good player. But I've seen some games, especially that Missouri game, where he struggled a little bit. So that's just – but there was also games where he played very well. So he was barely missing this list.
It's an excellent list. I think a guy that I really love is DeJuan Jones. There's a legitimate chance that Ohio State has the 2 best tackles in this draft, in my opinion. Just especially pass protection wise. It's sometimes it's hard for DeJuan Jones to get downhill and move and run block a little bit. But DeJuan Jones is just a very underrated guy, in my opinion, coming into this draft. Chase, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball here. Who do you think out of this group? It's hard to compare left tackles, right tackles, any offensive lineman really necessarily into the NFL. It's hard to compare the styles and things like that. So I'm asking you this: who do you think has the most longevity out of this group? Who do you think is let's say a Joe Thomas, a guy like that comes in, plays 10 to 15 years in this league, ends up getting a cold jack? Who do you see having a long career here?
Well, it's either Skoronski or Paris Johnson Jr. I'm just trying to think of the situation that both of those guys could go into. I mean, Paris Johnson's going to, potentially be playing with Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears. I mean, if he's able to protect Justin Fields, obviously he's going to have enough time to make throws and make him look really good up front and all. Like you said, Paris Johnson, I mean, he's, one of the best run blockers in college football, insane pass blocker, all that. And then, Peter Skoronski when it comes to, just consistency. I mean, in the NFL, if you're a consistently good player, great player all the time, you're able to do your job and just come to work and be efficient and be a leader for those guys around you. I mean, you're going to see yourself in the league 10 plus years. You're going to end up, hopefully your team ends up getting better around you, unlike Joe Thomas. I mean, they were absolutely dog shit around him. All right.
See, that's the thing about great offensive linemen. You could really, really find it. You don't have to necessarily have a great team around you to have a long career. Yeah. With a lot of other positions like quarterback, receiver, you got to have great guys around you to get you the ball or to catch your passes, things like that. If you're a great offensive lineman, you can find a niche and find a place to stay and build a long career, even if your team isn't good. So, I mean, it's more. It just depends. I think it's really more of how hard the guy works and how talented and the type of organization he gets into when it comes to having a great career as an offensive lineman. I really do.
That's the big one right there. Obviously, talking about, having that work ethic and still, staying motivated and all that. But I mean, it really does depend on where you get drafted to. I'm telling you, like if you get drafted and you're pass blocking for Justin Herbert or you're pass blocking for Patrick Mahomes or whatever, you play pretty good. Those guys are going to get you paid. You're going to get you a bag. You're going to stay motivated. Burrow, Allen, all those guys. I mean, if you go to a really good situation and you perform really well, you're going to be seen. You're going to be heard about, and there's a better chance that you get a gold jacket if you keep being consistent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to state this. Schmitz being ahead of Darnell Wright and DeJuan Jones does not mean I think he should be drafted ahead of them. I just wanted to say that because
you just think he's a better player.
He's a better player, but I think a center should go lower. So I think 4 of these guys are probably first-round picks. Schmitz probably second round. I just wanted to state that before anybody comments about obviously a center won't go ahead of 2 tackles that the teams need. So
there's no secret. Tackles are the more premium position in the National Football League for sure. Let's go ahead and move on to interior defensive lineman, which I think is my favorite part of this list. For me, you got guys like Jalen Carter, Brian Breezy, Mozzie Smith from Michigan, Clancy from Pittsburgh. There's a lot of talented defensive tackles. Now, recently, as up to about a month ago, when everything came out with Jalen Carter, he was the first non-quarterback in everybody's draft board. It felt like that he was going to be, a consensus first pick off the board without being a quarterback. So I guess to you, Chase, who's the guy that sticks out to you, maybe that's moved up the draft board? That's an interior defensive line.
Brian Bresee. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw a story last year. And I think it was during October. I think it was actually right before the game they played against Wake Forest. They had, I think his sister was dealing some type of disease with some type of disease. She ended up passing away, and then Bresee went out there and played a fantastic game against Wake Forest. But when it comes to that was a fantastic story to hear on him. But looking at the draft profile concept, I mean 6'6", 298. 40 ran 4.86. And shuttle he ran 4.38. I know combine stuff doesn't really mean a whole lot, but I just like his size. I like his will to get after the quarterback. I think he's a guy that could be a rotational defensive tackle, and his his first year in the league and stuff like that, and really make a name for himself in the right system that he goes into. I think he's really going to flourish, in a 4-3 defense, but it's going to be interesting to see where he goes.
Absolutely. I just to piggyback off of that, I'm with you there. He was a number 1 overall recruit. Very, very. I mean, some of his high school tape is absolutely insane. The way he throws dudes around when he coming out of Clemson. He didn't come out after 3 years. Got hurt in college. It's a little bit different. Most of the time you see big time defensive ends coming into high school. It's 3 years and they're gone. He wasn't defensive lineman. He came back another year. So he's got more development, I think, and is probably more of a mature player than a lot of the other defensive linemen. So I like that one. Brady, let's go ahead and pass it to you here. Give us a top 5, and then give us another guy under the radar.
Yeah. So back to our top 5s. So number 1 is Matt Ricketts out of Kenton Ridge High School.
Hey, 5.5 sacks, baby. He's coming out.
He's coming out. He's coming out. Should have came out a few years back, but
better late than never.
But number 1, I have Jalen Carter. He's the consensus number 1 defensive tackle. Like Matt said, a lot of people had him as the number 1 defensive prospect. I never necessarily agreed with that. I would have Will Anderson ahead of him, but certainly still would have had him probably at number 2. Very disruptive, very good, athlete, I would say, for his size, except for during his pro day. That was really weird. I don't know if he wasn't trying or what, but he looked extremely lazy. But when you watch him on tape, he's quick with his hands. He throws people around, and he can just move for his size. So very good. Definitely the number 1 defensive tackle prospect. 2, Brian Brzee. He's always been that dude, really, out of high school. Number 1 recruit. Commits to Clemson. Started 3 years at Clemson, all 3 years. Did have injury issues, but he's just a massive human being. And I think he's going to be a very good player. Definitely a first rounder, in my opinion, maybe bottom first round. Number 3, I have Kalijah Cansey out of Pittsburgh. Again, athlete for his size. Really, all 3 of these guys are good athletes for their size. And similar molds. I just think Cansey plays with a high motor and was definitely fun to watch play for Pittsburgh this year. 4, I have Mozzie Smith out of Michigan. He's probably not the athlete these guys are, but he's probably the strongest of the 4. Very, disruptive defensive lineman in the run game. Not as good of a pass rusher, but he can really plug in. The A gap is not – you're not running through the A gap on Mozzie Smith very often. Definitely a good player. And then number 5, I have Siaki Ika out of Baylor, which is the definition of plugging the A gap. This dude is he's one of those big Samoan defensive tackles that we've been seeing. Have been turning out good. So definitely a good piece, and my number 5 defensive tackle. And then under the radar wise, it's tough. I think I'm going to go with Teron Vincent out of Ohio State. And not a great college player. Was a 5-star out of high school. Not that he's not my number 6 guy, so don't take it as that. But he did he did have a better year than he's been having this season. So just watch out for Vincent. That's all I can say.
I like that. It's a good pick. You know who I think is going to end up playing tackle on the next level too, though, on the inside? I think Zach Harrison's going to play on the inside as well a little bit in the next level. So actually, I was going to say Zach Harrison. That would be my guy because I think he's going to switch positions at the next level. I think he is such a big motherfucker. He is so huge.
He is, man. He is. He
is the scariest dude. Now, he doesn't have elite get off speed on the outside, but his wingspan is so big and he's so huge. It's just incredibly hard for guys to get inside of him and move them on the interior when he gets his arms extended. That's why I think he might end up switching positions a couple years down the line, and he might be a guy for me that's kind of under the radar. But Chase, let's go ahead and compare some guys here. Especially the guys in this list. Who do you compare to defensive tackles? Inside guys in the league today.
Well, obviously you said it's tough to compare offensive linemen, but defensive linemen's a little easier. But just one guy that really sticks out, I think is going to have a very long and really nice career. Hopefully this isn't a cold take. I think Kalijah Cansey. I saw him, every every site's first team All-American everywhere it goes. Okay. That was, looking at that, but he's highly productive. He has great control of his body. Lower bodies, he is, very strong guy, very, able to get back to the quarterback. He has, I saw a list here. It said, a strength that says has all the pass rush moves you would expect from a seasoned vet off of NFL Draft Buzz. If you're coming into the league having all this stuff already in your bag and you're able to learn some more stuff from the interior defensive line position, that's pretty scary. All right.
Oh, yeah.
These are the type of guys that you plug and play, especially if he goes, onto a playoff team, and some guys are, guys are moving around because of their contracts and, they're plugging in a young guy, for, a team later on in this first round. That's pretty scary stuff. So I really like Kalijah Cansey and seeing what's going on with him. And then, like Brady mentioned, Mozzie Smith, just pure run stopper, plugs the A-gap. Swallows the running back and all. I mean, he does a good job of just really causing some road construction in there. So I think Mozzie Smith as well. And then I know you're mentioning what's his name, Siaki Ika or whatever. Like, I mean, when it comes to these Samoan defensive tackles, man, you've seen a couple of them from the past. You saw like Haloti Nata, you saw Domata Peko, Vita Vea. There's some really good ones in the league, and they just kind of take this role of like, I'm 6'6", 350 pounds. I'm going to clog you in the middle. So, really the last three on Brady's top 5 list, I think, are all really sticking out to me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, just before we kind of wrap things up here, Jalen Carter, with the all the off-field stuff, the off-season issues that have gone on, where, I guess we'll start with Chase here. Where do you guys see him moving in the draft? Do you see him not falling very much? Do you see teams, kind of passing up on him? Where do you see him landing, and what pick?
He's not going to fall too far. I think he's just that good of a talent. I don't think people are going to really be like, oh, his pro day is that bad where he's going to fall into the teens and the 20s. I mean, he met with teams only in the top 10, and, that could backfire. Obviously, he doesn't get selected in the top 10, but I think enough teams are going to be like, Jalen Carter's this good. We're going to get him in the organization, and, we're gonna make him become a great defensive tackle as he already is. I could see the Seattle Seahawks taking something at him, depending on where the Arizona Cardinals, if they trade back, because apparently they're in trade talks right now with about 6 other teams that are probably trying to trade up and get a quarterback, which we'll talk about on the next episode. That's going to be a very fun one. But I think the Seahawks is where he's going to fall to at 5, honestly. I mean, the Seahawks have a couple needs they got to fill. And, I think if they're in this best player available scenario, I think you take Jalen Carter and you can worry about a quarterback some other time.
Brady, what about you?
In terms, to be honest, I really don't know if he'll drop or not, just because it's tough to gauge. I feel like he might drop a little bit, but I don't think he'll fall out of the top 10 necessarily. I'm not sure where or anything, but I would take him in the top 10, but especially back half, just because, he is a good player. But I would try to straighten him up a little bit. I'll definitely tell him that he's got to, he can't be doing what he's been doing, since the offseason, if that makes sense. And that's really all I gotta say. I think I would take him in the top back half of the top 10. So anywhere from 6 to 10, I think he lands from somewhere in there.
Let me add this. All right. So Detroit, my fault, Matt. Detroit at 6. I don't know if they're gonna pick. They're probably not gonna pick a quarterback. I wouldn't out of these guys. Jalen Carter could fall to Detroit. And if he somehow goes to Philadelphia with his former teammate Jordan Davis from Georgia. Philadelphia just coming off the Super Bowl. They lost a lot. They lost Javon Hargrave. You can replace him with Jalen Carter.
Yeah,
that's pretty scary. So I mean, obviously look out for Detroit and Philadelphia to look at it. But I think he's going to go to Seattle.
One thing that I thought was really surprising for him was not when he cut it off at 10 and not interviewing anybody outside the top 10. Yeah. I thought it was really dumb on his part, just because it wasn't, not necessarily. It's not like he's going to fall out of the top 10 necessarily. It's more so here in a couple years, you're going to be fighting for a second contract. If you want to interview with everybody to get them familiar with him, into free agency a few years down the road. Oh, hey, I remember interviewing that guy during the draft process. He was really good. Maybe we could sign him. You know what I mean? So I thought it was a really, really interesting decision I thought it was a very dumb decision on his part, but he's pretty confident. Maybe he'll end up being a one-team guy for 10, 15 years. Maybe he'll be, J.J. Watt. Well, obviously he went to Arizona at the end, but you get what I'm saying. Maybe he'll end up staying with his team for forever and not have to worry about it. He'll be a superstar. But anybody have any closing thoughts here? Anything before we wrap it up today?
Jerron Cage. Draft the man.
It's a big dude. Chase, what about you?
This is a fun episode. I tell you, the next one, talk about quarterbacks and pass catchers.
I'm excited for the next one.
There's going to be a lot of stuff there. There's going to be a lot of stuff in
just
that
for
one.
all the folks at home, going forward here, these NFL episodes, I'm hoping to continue hosting. Chase has got some NFL knowledge that he wants to share, I guess, more of an analyst role. I think I'd like to take on more of a host role when it comes to this. But when we get back into college football and other shows like that, don't you worry. So I would appreciate feedback, positive and negative, from everybody that I know that's watching the show, and that it's only going to make us grow. So whatever we can work on, continue to give it to us in the comments, or just hit us up or text us. So thank you guys for tuning in today. We'll see you the next episode. Thank you.
Jerron.